My stepmom asked me to cancel my wedding so my fiancé could marry my stepsister. My family called me selfish and turned on me, but my grandma exposed them all, and now my dad got divorced. I'm 25 years old. I work as an administrative assistant at an accounting firm, and honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened a few months ago with my wedding literally destroyed my family. Or, well, what I thought was my family. The thing is that my stepmother, Jennifer, basically asked me to cancel my wedding and convince my fiancé to marry my stepsister instead. And when I say she asked me, it wasn't like a suggestion or anything, it was like a demand, like I owed her that for raising me. But let me start from the beginning, because there's a lot of context, and if I don't explain the whole story properly, you're not going to understand how surreal everything was. I came to live with my dad when I was 5 years old, and I don't remember much from before that, to be honest. Just flashes of my biological mother, who wasn't exactly mother of the year. You know, the type of person who would leave a 5-year-old home alone for days or who would forget to feed her because she was too busy with her own problems. I'm not going to go into details because that's a whole other story. But basically, social services got involved, and my dad, who had been trying to get custody for years, was finally able to take me with him. My dad was and is a good man. He worked as a manager at a factory, made good money, had a decent house, and when I came to live with him, he did everything possible to make me feel safe and loved. The first few years, it was just him and me, and those were good years, like really good. It was like finally having a real family. When I was like 8 years old, almost 9, I think, my dad met Jennifer at work. She worked in human resources or something like that. She was like 28 years old at that time and had a 6-year-old daughter named Melissa. Melissa was born with a neurological condition. I don't know exactly what it's called because I never really understood the medical terms, but basically it affected her mobility and she used a wheelchair. And she also had some developmental issues, although her mind worked perfectly fine. It was just that her body didn't cooperate like other people's. At first, everything seemed normal. I mean, Jennifer was nice to me. She treated me well. Melissa was sweet, although she obviously needed a lot of attention and special care. And my dad seemed happy to have someone in his life again. When they got married when I was 10, and we all moved together into a bigger house that had a ramp, and everything adapted for Melissa. I'm not going to lie and say that Jennifer was an evil stepmother from the beginning, because she wasn't. She took care of me, helped me with homework, came to my school events, that kind of thing. But always, and when I say always, I mean always, Melissa was priority number 1, which I guess makes sense because she needed more help than me. But sometimes I felt like I was the second-rate daughter. You know what I mean? Like, if Melissa needed something at the same time I needed something. Obviously, Melissa won. If there was money for only one extracurricular activity, it was for Melissa's therapy, not for my art classes that I wanted to take. If Jennifer had to choose between going to my science presentation or taking Melissa to the doctor, well, you know which one she chose. But anyway, I understood it, or at least I tried to understand it, and Melissa and I got along okay in general. Like, we weren't super close, but we didn't fight all the time or anything either. She was shy and quiet, spent a lot of time in her room with her books and movies, and I had my own friends and my own life. Everything changed when I met Matthew in high school. I was like 15 years old, almost 16. He was new at school, had moved from another state because his dad got a better job here, and we ended up sitting together in history class because we were the only two who didn't know anyone else. Matthew was, I don't know how to explain it, like the most genuinely good guy I had ever met. He was funny, but not in a cruel way to others. He was smart but not cocky. He was handsome but didn't know it, or at least didn't act like he knew it. We became best friends almost immediately. Like that instant connection you sometimes have with someone where you feel like you've known them your whole life. We spent all our time together, studied together, had lunch together. He came to my house all the time and met my whole family. And this is where things get complicated because Melissa, who was like 13 years old at that time, developed a huge crush on Matthew. Like, huge. At first, I thought it was cute, you know? Like, aw, my little sister has her first platonic love or whatever. But it became intense. She always wanted to be in the same room when Matthew came over, always tried to talk to him, asked him a million questions. And Matthew, being the kind guy he was, always paid attention to her and talked to her patiently, asked her about her favorite books and that kind of thing. Jennifer noticed the crush, obviously. I mean, it was impossible not to notice. And instead of like helping Melissa understand that it was just a passing feeling or whatever, Jennifer fed into it. She would say things to Melissa like Matthew was so kind to her, that he was a special boy, that it was nice she had a friend like him. She never directly told her that Matthew and she could be something, but she also didn't explain the boundaries or the reality of the situation. And I wasn't dating Matthew at that time. We were just friends, so I didn't feel like I had the right to say anything about how Melissa felt, although I admit it made me a bit uncomfortable. Matthew and I started officially dating in senior year, and when I told my family Melissa had like a small breakdown, nothing dramatic, but she locked herself in her room crying, and Jennifer looked at me as if I had done something terrible on purpose. My dad was more understanding. He gave me a hug and told me he was happy for me, but I could see he was worried about Melissa too. Jennifer pulled me aside afterwards and told me to try to be sensitive with Melissa, that this was hard for her, that I had so many opportunities in life and Melissa had so few. And I felt guilty, obviously, because I didn't want to hurt Melissa, but I also wasn't going to not date Matthew just because my stepsister liked him. The next few months were weird. Like Melissa basically stopped talking to me. Jennifer was cold with me but not openly mean, just distant. Matthew came to my house less because he felt uncomfortable with the tension, so we spent more time at his house or out. We went to college together, to one that was like 3 hours from where we lived, and it was amazing at first to have that freedom and be together without all the family drama. But college is hard, you know, and Matthew and I were young and immature, and after like 2 years of dating, we had a huge fight about something I don't even remember well now. I think it had to do with him spending a lot of time with his friends from the soccer team and me feeling ignored, or maybe it was about something jealousy related. I don't know. The point is, we broke up. It was an ugly breakup, like one of those where you don't talk for months and you delete all the pictures together and you feel like your life is over. But eventually, we both moved on, or at least tried to. I finished college, went back to live with my family for a while as I looked for work, got the position at the accounting firm, and basically rebuilt my life without Matthew in it. Melissa by that time was like 21 years old and had improved her attitude towards me a bit. I mean, we still weren't super close, but at least she talked to me and we could be in the same room without tension. Jennifer also relaxed a bit, although I always felt there was like a resentment under the surface, like she had never completely forgiven me for dating Matthew years ago. Fast forward like 3 years after I graduated, I was 24 years old, working well, had dated a couple of guys but nothing serious. And I was at the supermarket one Saturday morning when I literally bumped into someone in the cereal aisle. And when I look up, it's Matthew. I hadn't seen him in person in like 5 years, although I had obviously seen his posts on social media from time to time, and it was like all the air left my lungs. We stood there like idiots for a second until he smiled and said, "Hey," and we started talking, and basically stayed in that supermarket aisle for half an hour catching up on our lives. Turned out he had moved back to the city like 6 months ago. Worked as an engineer at a tech company, lived in an apartment not far from where I lived, and was single. He asked me if I wanted to get coffee sometime, and I said yes, without thinking twice. That coffee turned into dinner, that dinner turned into seeing each other every weekend, and before I knew it, we were dating again, and it was like we had never separated, except now we were older and more mature and knew what we had. After a year of being together again, Matthew proposed to me in the same park where we had our first date when we were 16, and I obviously said yes because I was completely sure he was the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. When I told my family that Matthew and I were engaged, my dad was excited. He hugged me tight and told me he had always known Matthew and I would end up together, that we were perfect for each other. But Jennifer made a weird face, like I had slapped her, and Melissa, who was in the living room with us, turned completely pale. Melissa started breathing fast and trembling, and Jennifer ran to her asking what was wrong, and Melissa had like an anxiety attack right there, hyperventilating and everything. They had to take her to her room and give her medication, and Jennifer looked at me before leaving with an expression I can't even describe, like between anger and panic, and something else. I didn't identify at that moment. After that, I decided it was time to move out of the family home anyway. I was 25 years old and about to get married. It was time. Matthew helped me pack my things, and we found a small but nice apartment where we could live together until the wedding and after. My dad was sad that I was leaving, but understood. Jennifer barely spoke to me during the whole moving process, and Melissa didn't come out of her room the day I left. I thought that over time things would get better, that once we got married and everything calmed down, the family would adapt and we'd move forward. I had no idea what was coming. The wedding was planned for a Saturday in June. We were going to get married in an event garden near the city. Nothing super fancy, but nice. We were going to have like 80 guests between family and friends. We already had the dress, the suit, the catering, everything organized. It was Tuesday, 2 days before the wedding, and I was at the apartment packing some things for the honeymoon when someone knocked on the door. I opened it and it was Jennifer, alone, without my dad or Melissa, which was weird because she almost never came to visit me alone. I asked her if everything was okay, and she said she needed to talk to me about something important. So I let her in and offered her water or coffee, but she said no, that she just needed me to listen. She sat on the couch and started talking, and what she said was so absurd that at first I thought she was joking or that I had misunderstood. She told me I needed to cancel the wedding with Matthew, that I needed to talk to him and convince him to marry Melissa instead. Literally, that's what she said. Like, I'm not exaggerating at all. I stood there, trying to process what I had just heard because it couldn't be real. I had to be misinterpreting something, but Jennifer kept talking. She said that Melissa had been in love with Matthew since she was a child, that Matthew was the only person outside the family who had ever treated her with kindness and respect, that Melissa deserved to have a chance to be happy with someone who loved her. I told her, literal these words, "You're crazy. You can't be serious." And Jennifer looked at me with this completely serious expression and told me I owed her this, that she had raised me since I was a child, that she had given me a home and a family, that she had treated me like her own daughter, and that now that she needed something from me, I owed her that consideration. She started saying that I had so many options in life, that I could meet another man, that I was young and pretty and could have whatever I wanted, but that Melissa was never going to have those opportunities, that no man was going to want to marry her because of her disability, that Matthew was her only chance to have a normal life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Like, I felt like I was in a nightmare or a bad movie. I told her no. Obviously, no. That this was the most ridiculous and insulting thing anyone had ever asked me. That Matthew and I loved each other and that Melissa had to accept reality and move on with her life. Jennifer got angry, started raising her voice, saying I was selfish, that I only thought about myself, that I was taking away the only happiness Melissa could have, that after everything she had done for me, this was how I repaid her. I told her to leave my apartment, that I didn't want to keep hearing this, and she stood up and told me I was going to regret it, that my dad was going to know what kind of selfish person I really was, and she left slamming the door. I stayed there sitting on the couch shaking, like my whole body was shaking and I couldn't stop. And when Matthew got home like an hour later, he found me crying. I told him everything, every word of the conversation with Jennifer, and Matthew was in complete shock, like his face went through like 10 different emotions while I explained. He hugged me and told me this was crazy, that obviously we weren't going to do what Jennifer asked, but that maybe we should postpone the wedding a few days or weeks until we resolved this with the family because he didn't want me to get married with all this tension and stress. Part of me didn't want to postpone anything. I wanted to go ahead with the wedding as planned because we hadn't done anything wrong, but Matthew was right that we needed to resolve this first. I called the event venue, and luckily they could change the date to 2 months later without charging us extra. I called the guests, letting them know about the change. It was total chaos, but everyone was understanding, although obviously I didn't tell them the real reason. That night my dad called me yelling, literally yelling on the phone, saying how could I be so cruel to Melissa? How could I tell Jennifer that Melissa didn't deserve to be happy for being disabled, that he had raised a heartless daughter? I tried to explain to him what really had happened, but he wouldn't let me talk. He just kept yelling the things Jennifer had obviously told him. It's a completely distorted version of the conversation, where I was the villain who had insulted Melissa and her disability. I told him Jennifer was lying, that that wasn't the conversation we had at all. But he said he didn't believe me, that Jennifer had no reason to lie, that she had been protecting me for years by her own account. He hung up the phone and I was devastated because my dad, my own dad, who was supposed to know me better than anyone, believed Jennifer over me without even hearing my complete version of the story. The next few days were horrible. I temporarily moved to Matthew's house because I didn't want to be alone and needed his support. I tried to call my dad several times, but he didn't answer my calls. Then, like a week after all this, my maternal grandmother, my biological mom's mom, but who had always been good to me despite everything, called me asking what the hell was going on because my dad had made a post on Facebook, a public post, saying his daughter had deeply disappointed him, that she had disrespected his family, that he was cutting contact with me until I apologized to Jennifer and Melissa. He didn't mention specific details in the post, but enough people from my family and friends saw it and started asking me what had happened, and rumors spread like wildfire. Like some said I had stolen money, others that I had hit Melissa. Completely made up stories that had nothing to do with reality. I tried to explain to my grandmother what really happened, and she was quiet for a long moment, and then said, "That woman always gave me bad vibes. I believe you completely. Come to my house this weekend and we're going to solve this." My grandmother lived in the countryside, like 2 hours from the city, in a big house that had been my grandfather's before he died. She was a 6-8-year-old woman but had more energy and mental clarity than most 40-year-olds, and she didn't let anyone manipulate her. Matthew and I went to visit her that weekend, and she prepared food for us. We sat in her kitchen, and she made me tell the whole story from the beginning, interrupting every now and then to ask specific questions or clarify details. When I finished telling everything, she said, "Your dad is a fool, but we're going to make him see reason. That's my son after all, and I raised him better than this." She asked me if Matthew and I still wanted to get married, and we told her yes, more than ever actually. She said, "Perfect. You're going to get married here, at my house, this same weekend if you want. I'll arrange everything." It was so surreal, like my grandmother basically planning an express wedding in her kitchen while we drank tea, but it was also exactly what I needed to hear. We told her yes, that we wanted to do that, and she made some calls, and by Sunday, we had a justice of the peace who came to her house. It was just my grandmother, Matthew, me, Matthew's parents, and his sister, and we got married in the backyard of my grandmother's house with her, crying with happiness and taking pictures with her phone. It was perfect, like more perfect than any big wedding we could have had, because it was intimate and real, and we were surrounded only by people who genuinely loved and supported us. After we got married, my grandmother sat Matthew and me down and told us she was going to take care of Jennifer, to trust her, that she knew exactly how to make my dad see the truth. I didn't know exactly what she was planning, but knowing my grandmother, I knew it was going to be good. Like 2 weeks later, my grandmother called Jennifer and told her she needed to talk to her about something important, something related to an inheritance and money my grandfather had left. Jennifer obviously agreed to go visit her. And my grandmother told me later that when Jennifer arrived, she was super nice, offered her coffee, asked her about Melissa, like the typical courtesy chat. Then my grandmother told her that my grandfather had left some money in an account nobody knew about, like $50,000 or something, and that she wanted to divide it among her grandchildren, but needed to know some things first about the family situation because she had heard rumors and wanted to understand what had really happened. My grandmother basically set a trap for her, and Jennifer fell for it completely. Jennifer told her version of the story, the version where I was the bad one who had refused to help Melissa, who had been cruel and selfish. And my grandmother listened very carefully without interrupting. Then my grandmother started asking more specific questions, like what exactly had she asked me? And Jennifer, thinking my grandmother was on her side, told her everything. She told her she had asked me to cancel the wedding and convince Matthew to marry Melissa, that it was fair considering everything she had done for me. My grandmother asked her if she didn't think that was a lot to ask, and Jennifer said no. That I owed her that Melissa deserved to be happy, and that I could find anyone but Melissa only wanted Matthew. She kept talking and talking, and what Jennifer didn't know was that my dad was listening to the entire conversation from the kitchen door, hidden there because my grandmother had called him earlier and asked him to come early and hide to listen. My grandmother told me later that my dad was white as a sheet when he came out of his hiding place and confronted Jennifer right there. My dad asked Jennifer if everything he had just heard was true, and Jennifer got all nervous and tried to explain it was a misunderstanding, that I had taken things out of context. But my dad didn't let her continue. He told her, how could she have lied to him like that? How could she have destroyed his relationship with his daughter over something so twisted? How dare she ask someone to sacrifice their happiness that way? Jennifer started crying and saying she only wanted what was best for Melissa, that as a mother she had to do everything possible for her daughter. But my dad told her that wasn't being a mother, that was being manipulative and cruel. There was a huge fight, according to what my grandmother told me. Jennifer screaming that nobody understood how hard it was to raise a daughter with a disability, that everyone judged her but nobody helped her, that she only wanted Melissa to be happy for once in her life. My dad told her to leave my grandmother's house and that when he returned to his own house, he wanted Jennifer and Melissa to move out, that he was going to start the divorce process, that he didn't want to continue being married to someone capable of manipulating and lying that way. My grandmother called me that same afternoon to tell me everything, and I couldn't stop crying, like years of frustration and pain coming out all at once. My dad called me the next day, crying, asking for forgiveness, for not believing me, for turning his back on me when I needed him most, for posting that horrible post on Facebook without even hearing my complete version. I told him I forgave him because in the end he had also been manipulated by Jennifer, and that what was important was that now he knew the truth. He asked me if Matthew and I had already gotten married, and I told him yes, that we had gotten married at Grandma's house. And he started crying harder, saying he was so sorry, that he should have been there, that he should have been the one to give me away at the altar or whatever. That was like 4 months ago. My dad divorced Jennifer. The process was quick, because she didn't fight much. I think she knew she didn't have any legal or moral argument to stay. Melissa, and she moved to a smaller apartment on the other side of town. My dad is giving them child support for Melissa, because in the end she's his stepdaughter, and he doesn't want her to suffer because of her mother's actions, but he has no contact with Jennifer at all. Melissa sent me a message like a month ago. It just said, "I'm sorry," and I didn't know what to answer, so I didn't answer anything. I guess I'm still processing everything. Jennifer never apologized to me directly. In fact, she told some relatives that she didn't do anything wrong, that she was just trying to take care of her daughter, and if that makes her a bad person, then so be it. There are people in the family who still think I should have been more understanding of Melissa's situation, that maybe Jennifer asked in the wrong way, but her intention came from a good place. But honestly, those people can think whatever they want. I know the truth, and my real family, my dad, my grandmother, Matthew, they know the truth too. Matthew and I are fine. We live together in our apartment. We work. We make plans for the future. Normal things married people do. My dad comes to have dinner with us every 2 weeks and is trying to rebuild our relationship, and I'm letting him because in the end, he's my dad, and he was a victim of Jennifer's manipulation as much as I was. My grandmother is still the hero of this story. Like without her, I don't know how I would have proven the truth or convinced my dad. Last week, my dad asked me if I could ever completely forgive what happened, if our relationship could go back to being like before. I told him the truth, that I don't know if it can go back to being exactly like before because something broke when he chose not to believe me, but that I'm willing to try to build something new, something different but just as strong. He nodded and said, that was fair, that he was going to work every day to regain my trust. And that's enough for now, I guess.